Today I am introducing you to our new lightweight mobile sheep shelter. Last year I built this monstrosity behind me here. This was my first attempt at a mobile sheep shelter and it is a beast. It is super heavy. Ashley and I are able to move it together and it would probably be a lot better if I put wheels on it. But even with wheels on this thing, this is not something I would want to be moving daily in paddock rotation with the sheep. My big goal with sheep management this year is to do a daily paddock shift rotation. So far I've been setting up a paddock for them with electric netting and leaving them access to the corral so they'd go out and eat. I'd give them access for one day out on the paddock and then they come back to the corral and I close it off and move the fencing. But ultimately I want to close this corral off. And it'd be nice to put the American guinea hogs in here, give them a little bit more room, especially now that they're getting ready to farrow. But basically have this closed off to the sheep and leave them out on pasture, moving their shelter and water with them every day to a new paddock. So with that end in mind, I needed a much lighter weight shelter. This didn't need to be a fancy shelter that could overwinter. This is basically number one goal, sun protection, and as a secondary goal, give them a place to get under if we get some heavy rain. As you can see, this thing was really lightweight. Little Buddy could move it by himself. No issues there. This new sheep shelter is not the only thing we've built in the last couple days. I built another farrowing hut. That one looks much nicer than the first one I built, which is this one here. I pulled this one out and I'm gonna modify it to be more like that one. That one came out really nice. Of course, no farrowing yet. And we built a second Soskovich style chicken tractor. This one came out a lot nicer than the first one also. We'll be adding our chickens to it just as soon as we get our tarp we ordered for it. Looks like I missed one here. I'll get that tied up over there, but you can see that it's not casting a lot of shadow. But they do pretty much huddle up pretty tightly under their current shelter without issues. But I'm thinking I might need to build a second one of these. It's no problem. It was very inexpensive to build. It just took a little time. So not a big deal. I might be able to knock one out. But before I go ahead and build another one, I am going to put up some fencing around this little area here. Give the sheep a new paddock and put them in here. And see how they like the shelter. So while I am putting up the fencing, we'll take a quick chicken intermission. The fencing is now up and we have our little paddock here. Shelter is in place. Come on, Blue. Come on, Blue. Come on out. No? The sheep corral is now closed off. I pulled their water out. They have the shelter here for some shade, so there's no reason for them to have to get back into the corral. Of course, Blue's out here now too. I'm gonna let them graze for a little while. They're enjoying getting the fresh greens. When they're done grazing, they're probably gonna wanna sit down for a little bit and chew some cud in the shade, so we'll check back and see how they're doing with the new shelter. The sheep have pretty much finished their grazing and they have not been using their shelter at all because by the time they finished, the sun has been going down, the temperature's been dropping, it's much cooler out, so they don't really need the shade. Well, Sage and that little lamb there are using it, but it's really not creating any shade for them right now, nor do they need shade right now. As you can see, it's really not that effective for creating shade. It is light, it is mobile, but is not a sufficient source of shade, so I'm giving myself a big on this one. Though one of my concerns wasn't realized, I really thought the sheep would be rubbing up against the EMT conduit and just knocking the whole thing over, but that hasn't happened. I'm just gonna have to play with the design a little, maybe add a tarp to the side of it, which is gonna give them afternoon shade, or maybe reposition the tarp that's on there, bigger tarp. I'll just have to play with it and see if I can work something out. This morning, Ashley and I put a tarp on the western side of the sheep shelter in the hopes that it's gonna provide some additional shade in the afternoon sun. Right now it's about 1 p.m. so the sun is pretty high and overhead. So we can't really see if that western tarp is making any difference right now, but I suspect in the next hour or two we'll start seeing it. We still have some space limitations with this shelter, but we'll keep brainstorming and see what else we can come up with.